Welcome to HR Tech Talks, everyone. I'm George Rogers, and I'm glad, as always, to be your host here today. We have a very special guest, and I'm excited about the conversation. And I believe you will find some great insight, some inspiration that will help you in your workplace with our guest today. We have a special guest that obviously was award winner of our HR Tech Awards. And so we're going to continue to highlight some of those as well. As always, please feel free to comment, participate in the conversation if you're watching live. And if you're not watching live and you're watching this at a later time, that's great too. Continue to comment. We love to jump in the chats whenever we see those comments and really respond to those and just have a great conversation with that as well. So without further ado, I don't want to waste any more time on the intro. I really want to get our special guest up here with us. We have Greg Harris. Greg, welcome to HR Tech Talks. Glad to have you.
Thank you, George. Thrilled to be here.
Awesome. Just real quickly, for those who may not know about yourself and then also Quantum Workplace, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and also what Quantum Workplace is all about?
Absolutely. Greg Harris is the name. I'm the CEO of Quantum Workplace. Quantum Workplace is a employee success software platform. So employee success is engagement. It's the how engaged and how committed our teams are, our employees are to their company. It's also an impact application. That's performance, how aligned our teams and individuals to strategies, to goals. And it's a magnetism platform. So magnetism is that beautiful cultural harmony of being able to attract and retain the talent. That's the name of the game today. Every industry, every company knows that they're in the talent business. So we call those three feature sets together an employee success platform. And we do that for SMB, for middle market, and for enterprise companies alike.
Wow. So I'm excited about this conversation. We kind of talked a little bit beforehand. What are some of the problems that your technology, your platform is solving for your clients? You mentioned retention. That's been kind of the spotlight, right, of a lot of people's focus in the HR world. What are y'all doing, and what are the problems you're all solving that's helping really keep people engaged and be able to grow when it comes to retention, talent, culture?
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate that question. Our prospects, our customers are coming to us for a few different reasons. The primary one is probably that they acknowledge that culture is this dynamic concept, that it changes. It's an impact, the result of leadership and strategy and decision making. And sometimes we think about culture and we think of ping pong tables. We think about the artifacts of culture and we think of team events. But we know when we describe our work, that culture really means how people are hired, how people are fired, how people are promoted, how people are recognized for great work. And so the problems that they're coming is leadership teams, HR departments are not 100% confident that they are doing everything that they can do, that they're not listening to employees, that the collective intelligence of their people is going to be probably smarter than any single person or small team. And so they want to get smarter as a company. They want to integrate voice of the employee throughout multiple touch points in the life cycle. 20 years ago, that meant they would run an employee engagement survey once a year. Yeah. And they're still doing that. But today, what it means is they have points of continuous feedback that they're capturing. Maybe it's new hire surveys or exit surveys that are happening in an automatic way. But it's making sure that we're laying down the digital tools to capture voice of the employee. That's solution number one, is making sure that HR departments and leadership teams aren't making guesses and making decisions in the dark, that they are capturing ideas, strategies, feedback. And we are in an environment, and have been for a long time, where change is constant. Change aren't 12-month or not even 3-month quarterly cycles anymore. They're happening on a week by week, month by month cadence. And to be able to have continuous and frequent communication is making companies more agile. So problem number one that they're solving is uncertainty, and they're solving that with listening and accurate analytics that drive to action on our platform. Problem number two is workplaces are worried that in a remote world, in a world where we may not work side by side with one another, they're worried that people won't, that strategic communication isn't getting out, that people may not feel as connected, or that they belong inside an organization, or that their performance may not be recognized. There are some workplaces that are asking themselves, are people even working hard? And people take different approaches to how to solve for that. Using our platform, the solution is more about the feedback that individuals and teams are having around them of the people that are working. It's setting goals, tracking goals, creating increasing visibility across the entire organization for goals. That is, in our estimation, the best, most universal way to solve, to answer the productivity questions. That's what we all, in a technological world where new tools are being introduced every day, and where we have to create this magnetic culture where people, the best talent wants to work. We have to show, we have to communicate, we have to develop career plans for our talent. And we can only do that by driving performance and driving productivity across all of our teams.
Yeah, you mentioned culture, and I always smile whenever I hear the word. It gets me excited. When I think about culture, I saw on LinkedIn a while back that it says culture is how your employees feel on Sunday night, thinking about Monday morning. When I look at culture, I think about and define it as how your employees feel, believe, and behave most of the time. Right? It's just what really moves them. With Quantum Workplace, I know that there are so many different solutions that I do provide with the employee retention, the identity and development of top talent, and really helping build high performing teams. Is really that inclusive, for all levels. And you mentioned the remote as well. What are some of those highlights and trends that you're watching closely when it comes to the workplace, workforce, going into and beginning as we begin 2023?
Yeah. One of the strongest trends and most necessary trends, it's, we've probably known this intellectually for 15, 20 years, but organizations are finally starting to buy into this. The trend is that the concept of employee engagement, even the concept of culture, is no longer just owned by a single person on the HR team or the HR team themselves. For culture to impact all employees, it has to be owned by all employees. Senior leadership has a part to play. HR has a part to play. All managers have a part to play. And even individual contributors have to know that how they react, how they give feedback, how they are flexible and agile towards change is going to impact that broader cultural grittiness. And so that's a sea change, and that changes the tools that we use to think about culture or to get proactive about culture, because it's not just a couple buttons or a couple activities that HR does anymore. It's not just throwing a cool holiday party. It is about the conversations that our managers are having with employees. Or is there a standardized, expected cadence of one-on-ones? Is it monthly? Is it weekly? Is it quarterly? In what are the templates, and how does that data get rolled up, and how do people get how does their performance get evaluated based on the qualitative and quantitative data of those conversations? Are they happening multiple times throughout the year in a manner that isn't overly influenced by recency primacy or infrequency? Those are the kinds of trends, that the fact that we're accepting now that culture isn't a person. It's not your culture officer, your culture manager. It's not your office manager necessarily. It's all managers, it's all leaders, and it's all individuals. And the tooling and having the tooling in place to take action.
Yeah, so it's really that leadership tying into culture. I find it interesting. We recent study we looked at the psychological definition of belonging. Right, it's pretty straightforward. It's how I feel accepted, I feel respected, and I feel appreciated by my leader.
Yeah, that's good.
When we did this recent study, it really bought in and really exposed the light to a lot of the problems when an employee felt like their leader accepted them, respected them, and appreciated them. Their sense of belonging really rose up high, right? There was consistent manager feedback. There was access to tools to manage work and work-related tasks. There was, opinions shared and feedback and opinions at work. And so it brought in and really that sense of belonging really enhanced that culture of those employers in the workplace as well. With those, some of the things I believe Quantum Workplace does really well with providing some of those tools. What advice would you give employers to improve on the culture, the sense of belonging, which ultimately all those things really tie into the beginning conversation of retention, right? Where there's a good workplace and there's a sense of belonging, where there's a good culture, retention usually is really high up. Where there's a lack thereof, feeding out from leadership, bad leadership usually leads to bad culture, and
Yeah.
culture usually lead to a retention that's not likely in the favor of the business. What are some of those things that you can really challenge and inspire the audience when it comes to trends and hiring efforts to really improve their efforts on their part?
Yeah. I love that insight, George. I can tell that you're a thinker and that you're an expert, a subject matter expert on the concept of culture. It actually identifies another trend that we could have used in that, or to answer that last question, the trend being that in HR technology, those of us that are innovating, those that are of us that are creating technology to help organizations solve some of these challenges are building technology to support, because what you described, that definition of belonging, is neuroscience that we've known for a few decades. But we have, 10 years ago, when we would design tooling for performance reviews, we created technology and asked humans to come participate, to bend towards the technology. The trend in building technology today is building technology to facilitate human wiring and the way that our brain works and the way that social systems and social relationships work today. That is a huge trend. And that's one of the reasons why the most important, the most innovative ideas that are happening in HR technology right now are happening from younger, more agile, more creative shops. The advice that I would give to workplaces, the thing that we catch ourselves sharing with our customers the most, is to drive consistency, to step out of the idea that cultures are bad or good. It's a little bit of an elementary concept. So sometimes when we're talking over at the water cooler, better yet, if it's July 4th and we're at the picnic and we're talking to our family, we sometimes say, I love work, I love the culture, or I don't love work, I just took this new job, I don't like the culture. We think in terms of culture being evaluative. It's binary, it's good or it's bad. And I don't know if that is always the case. I'm sure there truly are bad cultures, but we need to think about culture more in a descriptive type manner. There are characteristics and attributes of a culture that are going to be really good for some talent and really bad for other talent. There might be an investment bank that loves a cutthroat, competitive culture, and they're hiring MBAs from all the most competitive grad schools. And that's a culture that wants and thrives on that competition. You're going to take some talent and you're going to put them into that organization, and the organization is going to chew them up and spit them out. So culture is as much about being able to know, define, to be able to communicate the attributes that you have now that are true today and that you want to be true tomorrow, and then to be able to describe those to new talent that's coming in, and make sure that you are filtering that talent based on those cultural attributes. And most organizations don't have 10 of those. They have 2 or 3 if they're really honest. Because the match then, engagement and retention, becomes the consistency with which the organization is able to connect expectations of the culture coming in and reality of the culture once they are on the other side, once their name is on the payroll stamp. Because if you tell me that you are a performance-oriented, feedback-rich culture in the interview, and I get into the organization and everybody's treated the same, everybody gets the same amount of raise or non-raise every January, and nobody gives each other real talk, real feedback, all of a sudden I'm disengaged on day 30 because I realized that, culture is to the organization what brand is to the marketing department. Consistency in shortest distance between reality and expectation wins, and it builds the strongest, most momentum in terms of talent.
Wow, that's so good. So good. I really like how you really described that and broke that down, Greg. I can go on with these conversations all day long. Let's break it back down and let's touch on the employee engagement piece a little bit more and go in depth with that. Just because I believe, and I think we're both on the same page when it comes to employee engagement, that's the critical piece of the business, right?
Yeah.
If they're not engaged and they're just showing up, are they really showing up?
Yeah.
And so a lot of employees will come into place, they know what they do, but it's a struggle on why we do what we do, right? It's always finding that why. And so when we find, many organizations and companies, have not figured out how to move that needle and get the results that they want. When it comes back to quantum workplace, I want to tie this into it because I think it's important, because I believe what y'all are providing and the results that y'all are seeing from the clients that you currently have. It's difficult to know for most organizations how to measure some of those things and where to focus, how to improve the weaknesses that they are seeing. With quantum workplace, what are some of those things that you can do to help that employee engagement be able to see and measure and really be able to turn the business around when it comes to their engagement? They got good leaders, people love working there, but how do we get the employees more engaged, and what is it about quantum workplace that says this is what we do and how we do it to take that to the next level?
Yeah, this is fun. There are a handful of universal things that drive, and this is psychology, it's neuroscience. Here's what's interesting, and even as we think about engagement's a word that's been in our lexicon in the workplace for a couple decades now, and the science is improving every single year. I have noticed in the last maybe 6 to 12 months that there's a growing murmur. I don't think it's definitely not a majority yet, but there's a vocal minority that is questioning the idea of engagement. Engagement is the emotional and intellectual commitment that we have to our organizations. It's going the extra mile. It's advocating for our workplace. It's trusting. It's assuming positive intent. And in a world where we are coming, we're in this super high economic, tight labor market, where with unemployment being under 4% and wage inflation creating, creating almost setting up a tension between organizations and talent. I hear more and more voices that are out there saying, is engagement really what we want to be measuring anymore? We wouldn't be thinking about that. And they get uncomfortable with that idea of discretionary effort, as if that, this came in the form maybe of, I even hate to use the term because I'm thankfully hearing the term less today than I was 3 or 4 months ago, but quiet quitting. The idea that maybe it's okay if people are just going to compartmentalize their work, give their work nothing more, nothing less than whatever their description. The challenge with that is great talent doesn't want to work like that. Great talent doesn't want to work side by side with that mentality. Good talent wants to work with other people that want to win. And winning most of the times, maybe all the time, requires that extra effort, that discretionary effort. Now, the defining what that means in a very tactical way can be gray, I suspect, but great talent wants to win, and they want to win side by side with other people that want to operate in a highly engaged way. So what do you do to create that? How do you drive engagement through the organization? Make sure that great work is being recognized. And recognition isn't just sending a watch to somebody on their 5-year anniversary. It's making sure that larger sets of the organization know when somebody is going above and beyond, and knows when somebody hits and attains a certain goal. Recognition is elevating visibility of goals, individual and team, and it's making sure that when those goals are met, that's when the interests of the employee and the interests of the organization are perfectly aligned. That's why we call our platform Employee Success, because we don't need to always talk about employer versus employee. Those two things don't have to be at odds. It's a weird psychology that tries to put them at odds. There's no, that social institutions, there's a reason why Edelman says that at least for the 3rd year in a row, the workplace is the most trusted social institution in America, because it's these are organizations where the interests of employees and the interests of the employers are aligned if our focus is on culture and our focus is on employee success. So we talked about recognition, and that is, it's extrinsic and intrinsic recognition of work well done. It's goal alignment. It's making sure that people know when they're not meeting expectations. It means people know when they are meeting expectations, and it's the feedback that they have, the coaching that they have. Most human beings want to be good at what they do. They want to do something they're good at, and they want to do it well. That human psychology is moving in a direction where that should be natural for most of us. So we have to get good at doing those things. It's being able to have autonomy in their role, making sure that people are getting there's vision cast into the future that knows what winning looks like, what Z looks like, but having some autonomy and knowing that their voice matters in what the path looks like to get from A to Z. Those are probably two or the three absolutely universal ways to drive engagement throughout the company.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I know that we can continue going on this conversation for many, many minutes and build on this. And I would love to continue the conversation later as well. But is there anything specific that you want to share as we wrap up everything today on this HR Tech Talk that's maybe on your heart that can inspire our audience at all?
I think the one thing, especially right now at a time where the economy is strong, labor market is tight, talent is in demand, but we're also looking out into the future, and we have business media that's telling us that the future might be scary. There might be storm clouds ahead. The thing that I would share with your audience, George, is that rain or shine, economic growth or economic decline, culture wins. That engagement is an all-season sport, that we can't pretend like we're committed to our team and our employees in an up market and then disregard their interest and disregard their voice and disregard their career paths when things get tight, because our talent remembers, our employer brands depend on the consistency that we have throughout. That doesn't mean that organizations, when a 50,000 person tech firm expands their workforce to 80,000 people in the course of a year and a half, and then they announce an 11,000 person layoff, it doesn't mean that they are this wretched, absolute, destroyer of talent. But it means that we in up markets and down markets have to have the same level of commitment, we have to be talking the same language, and our actions have to be supporting that language, that rhetoric, in terms of the commitment that we have to creating great careers for our people. It's worth it. Winning happens in the down markets.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think it's the root of really creating that culture, having leaders that are connected with their team. You mentioned the word love, and I always tell people it's amazing when we wake up in the morning. We love going to work. We love what we do, but we rarely say we love who we do it with, right? There's like a guardrail that blocks us from saying the L word to our team.
Yeah.
But really, man, when I think about my workplace, I love going to work. I love what I do, and I really love who I deal with. And I want to make sure they understand that connection as a leader to really create that culture of belonging. When I think about engagement and companies that are really thriving in these areas, they have a great culture. They encourage and celebrate diversity on all levels. They create a sense of community, a sense of purpose, a sense of belonging. And so being able to have that ability is so true to everything that you're saying. And it really is the root of employee engagement. How are you connecting with your employees? Are you speaking their language? For one, as a leader, do you know their language, right? Having surveys and understand how you can communicate to those people are so important.
That's what's so exciting about where we are in the workplace and in business science right now, because there was a time, and it wasn't even that long ago, is in my career, when we thought those two things were at odds. We thought if we wanted to hustle as a culture and to win as a culture, we wanted to have a performance-oriented culture, then we couldn't really talk or think about soft things like engagement or satisfaction or people or stress. It turns out that you can be equal parts hustle and equal parts care. In fact, to win, you have to do both. To win, to lead, you have to have trust, and you can't have trust until you first have demonstrated that you care, and you have to care before you can ask somebody to hustle and get in the trenches with you and go to battle. So the fact that we realize that organizations are built on win-win sociology of hustle and care is the most exciting. And probably not every organization believes this today, but those that do are the ones that I would be accumulating stock in for the next 10 years.
Yeah, that is so true. Listen, we got to wrap it up. We're going to continue this all day long here at HR Tech Talks. But how can someone connect with you or learn more about Quantum Workplace? Is there a certain specific place where they can connect with you?
Absolutely. I'm around on social. Hit me up on LinkedIn, on Twitter. My Twitter handle is Gregory Harris, @GregoryHarris, or hit me up on LinkedIn. Would love to connect, would love to communicate, would love to share ideas about culture, about engagement, about the science of leadership.
Well, as always, I appreciate you. Quantum Workplace is doing great things. Greg, I appreciate your time today. Thank you so much for joining us here on HR Tech Talks.
Thanks, George. Appreciate it.
Wow, that was awesome. Ladies and gentlemen, listen, I love having this conversation. Greg is an incredible leader and is doing great things in all things employee engagement, culture within the workplace. I want to thank everybody just joining us today. Do not forget, you can sign up for HR Tech Talks to get notified on all our upcoming new episodes that you can find myself and or Ben Eubanks leading those HR Tech Talks in the future. I want to thank everybody. Just also a reminder, our HR Tech Awards is open live for you. If you are looking to nominate, the website is open and you can go looking into 2023 for HR Tech Talks Awards nominees for this year. Thank you again for joining us today on HR Tech Talks. Once again, thank Quantum Workplace and Greg for joining us well. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, thank you.